Naruto exclusive videos lemon come out on my boosty. You can watch and subscribe. Link in the description. Enjoy watching. Description: it is clear to everyone that Naruto cannot live without adventures. But life after the war turned out in such a way that the famous blonde had to gather dust, gnawing on the granite of science, trampling her way to her dream. Boredom. True, it turned out that adventures also cannot live without Naruto. Take this, sign for it. The quest called Fall on Tobirama's Head begins. And in this set with Tobirama there are also Hashirama and Madara. Now it will definitely not be boring. Chapter 13. The thought of Kakuzu was driving her crazy. Her soul demanded to go to where Naruto had found Mito and Akane and look for traces of the future Akatsuki member. To track him down and deal with him here, spitting on the consequences. It was becoming more and more difficult to be in this time. And it was not at all that she was worried that her strength had not been restored, and that the time was dangerous and cruel, as practice had shown. She wanted to deal with the problems more and more. She wanted to turn the course of history and rid the shinobi world of Kagaya's intrigues, setting Madara on the true path. Not to let him slide into the darkness he so desired. The Uchiha was not as bad as he wanted to seem. And how many lives would she save with this? It was incomprehensible. Even if you do not think so globally, but simply eliminate the Five Heart, then you can avoid Asuma's death, which brought a lot of pain to Shikamaru. A drop in the ocean, I would like to think. But, Naruto, you can't influence the course of events. You can't. Jumping up from the futon, Naruto began to pace the room. She urgently needed to do something to distract herself from this. And in general, it was time to take steps to get out of here. So that she wouldn't dare to influence history. Uzumaki. Who, if not Uzumaki, understands seals? And Senju just happens to have 2 representatives of the clan living with her. And Naruto couldn't think of anything smarter than to immediately go to them in order to establish contact with them, and start carefully asking about Fuinjutsu. I won't let you go to them. Tobirama stood on the threshold of the house, blocking the entrance to the room with his powerful figure. Naruto angrily breathed into his collarbones, standing almost right next to him, her gaze flashing angrily. Her blue eyes were flashing lightning. I'll ask again, why? Taking a deep breath, exhaling slowly, Naruto tried to calm the wave of anger that had rolled over her. It was difficult for her to remain calm. She should also remember that she needed Tobirama too. He understood jutsu like no one else. And there was already a lot of tension between them. It was not worth making the situation worse. What tension? There was a huge gap between them, which became a little smaller only in moments when they were on the same wavelength discussing things important for the village. True, this had happened once, but Naruto had never felt such unanimity with anyone. Sighing heavily, Naruto clenched her fists with all her might in indignation. She would have tried to stubbornly enter the house, but Tobirama was a censor. He would sense her a mile away. When she came here, he was already standing in the doorway, blocking her way. Second, Mito is recovering, she needs peace, Senju condescended to explain after a long pause, watching how she was trying to control herself and not say nasty things to him. And she could do that. You'll come when she gets better, he said calmly. Naruto only bristled even more. And looked at him with such fury that right now he should have been burning with blue flames. She turned sharply and left, not hearing Tobirama's words in the noise of her own thoughts. Angrily kicking the stone, she imagined the albino's head in its place. It let up a little. What to do? She was not allowed to see Mito. Tobirama was negatively disposed towards her person. Ambush. Okay, stop. He led her in to see Mito. Not now, but in the future. And she also rewarded him with a murderous look, dousing him with her ki. Wow. It was awkward somehow. Uzumaki instantly became embarrassed. It would be necessary to correct the situation, otherwise he could quite reasonably exchange his favor for disfavor. After all, she had behaved very badly. The decision came unexpectedly. Passing by some tavern, she saw Hashirama and Madara having lunch, washing down their food with sake. Madara looked surprisingly relaxed and showed much more emotion than usual, listening to Senju's overly emotional story. Hashirama. Nothing brings people together like food and alcohol. In the case of Madara and Hashirama, paranormal soul affinity. Hashirama and Madara, feeling her long and attentive gaze, turned in her direction. Uchiha put on a stony face in a matter of seconds, and Senju actively waved his hand at her, smiling from ear to ear. Uzumaki waved back and walked away, looking for shops where she could buy drinks and snacks. After all, she was paid her first salary for the mission here. Tobirama's gaze burned and humiliated at the same time. Now it was quite justified. Not only could she tear him away from important matters, prevent him from thinking about jutsu or politics, but she also got in his face with her person for the second time that day. Naruto clenched her teeth, smiled tensely, and confidently approached the Senju brothers' house. It was hard to maintain a casual appearance. She didn't want to show that she felt something like guilt, as well as the fact that his gaze made her want to shrink. I know that I didn't please you with my existence, but... Naruto plopped down on the threshold, leaning her back against the shoujo near Tobirama's feet. Tobirama stoically swallowed her impudence, just as he masterfully hid his surprise. And Naruto could have bet his hand on the fact that she had amazed him. And when she pulled out a bottle of sake, a bamboo container with 2 pairs of chopsticks, and a bag of persimmons from the bosom of her dark kimono, Tobirama couldn't help but widen his eyes in surprise. Naruto smiled triumphantly at this. Sit down, don't be shy. She pushed her anger at the younger Senju away and waved her hand at the meager provisions with maximum cordiality towards him. And I'm sorry I expected different words from you. She immediately apologized for her not very nice behavior. Tobirama continued to stand, discouraged by what had happened. This was not what he expected. All his fighting spirit had evaporated, and his pose no longer looked so menacing and frightening. Well? Naruto raised her head and looked expectantly at the albino. I don't bite. And I'm not going to poison you. Opening the container with sashimi, she grabbed the neck of the bottle and, pulling it towards herself, uncorked it, slightly wrinkling her nose from the smell of alcohol. Tobirama silently and with distrust watched what was happening. As you wish. Uzumaki snorted and very unculturedly put their lips to the neck of the bottle, taking a sip of sake. Tobirama winced, seeing such blasphemy. And she invites him to drink, without having cups? Just like that, put his lips to the bottle after this woman drank from it. How did I displease you? Taking the chopsticks, as if nothing had happened, she reached for a thinly sliced tuna slice to eat away such an unusual and not particularly pleasant aftertaste of sake. Tobirama would have said that she displeased everyone. And she continued to displease in the present. But he decided to remain silent. Now this sly fox will talk his teeth, give him alcohol, feed him his favorite fish and get to Mito when he lets down his guard. And Hashirama asked him very seriously to make sure that Mito is not disturbed, even for trivial reasons. The princess of the Uzumaki clan needed to regain her strength. Okay, you don't trust me. Naruto, throwing her head back, looked at him, dissatisfied with the fact that he continued to be himself. Nasty and correct. He was clearly disgusted by her behavior. She arranged a mini buffet on the threshold of the house. I don't trust you myself, she said, because of which Tobirama raised an eyebrow questioningly and slightly changed his pose, turning half-turned to her. Naruto took this as a sign that the younger Senju had finally decided to show leniency towards her, being interested in her herself, and not in how successfully she used his new jutsu. Naruto looked away from him, pretending not to notice his reaction and silent question. Let him calm his pride and at least start talking to her. But Senju remained silent. He did not take the bait. Naruto suppressed a heavy sigh, washed down her indignation with sake, and ate a piece of mackerel. A rock, not a man. He does not fall for her naive provocations. Holy Kami, sit down already, Naruto exclaimed, because she was tired of raising her head. Her neck was mercilessly stiff. The unshakable Tobirama Senju stirred and after a few seconds he sat up, closing the shoujo and blocking the entrance to the house with his back. Naruto, smiling widely at the small victory, pushed the chopsticks and the bottle towards him. Tobirama looked at the bottle with disdain, to which Naruto snorted. Let's at least respect each other. How am I worse than Madara? Naruto looked at him point blank. The reaction to her words followed immediately. Tobirama was taken aback. What? You don't trust him, but that doesn't stop you from respecting him, even if he is an Uchiha. Naruto smiled at him. And I'm much better than Madara. Why did you decide that you are better than Madara? And what do you mean by that? She finished him off after all. She forced him to engage in conversation. Too unexpected a statement. And loud. Well, I don't dream of killing you. Naruto watched him closely, trying to read the slightest manifestation of his emotions. At first, surprise flashed in his red eyes, and then anger. Yes, I know about the Uchiha tragedy. And they do not know how to forgive, and you know this. Where did you get such knowledge? It seemed that this did not get him to talk, but added fuel to the fire of his hostility. I live in the Uchiha quarter, and I have ears. But in fact she wanted to tell how one of her well-known Uchiha almost fell into the very abyss of darkness, and she knew very well how representatives of this clan go crazy with hatred. Remembering Sasuke, Naruto took up the bottle again, and this time took a few sips. If things continued like this, she would get drunk. Tobirama lowered the degree of hostility. It was logical. She could hear different rumors living there. And she didn't want to prick his already gnawed conscience on this account on purpose. She simply gave very logical arguments with examples available to her. Let's say you don't dream of killing me, what else can you say in your defense? Tobirama looked at her, frowning. I'm beautiful, Naruto giggled and tried to smile ingratiatingly. SOSO argument, Tobirama said irritably. He expected to hear something more non-trivial. Okay, Naruto continued to smile, but moved on to serious arguments. I can fight back, both in battle and in words. I'm wary of you, not afraid. And also, if I try really hard, I can be an interesting conversationalist, she listed. She was doused with undisguised skepticism. Tobirama quite transparently showed how much he doubted her words. So, let's meet at the training ground tomorrow morning, and I'll prove to you that I can fight back, an indignant Naruto confronted Tobirama with the fact. Wasn't the demonstration with Madara enough for him? So she would seize the opportunity to seize the bait of Senju Jr. with great pleasure. What kind of technique was that, Rasengan, I think? Tobirama asked, remembering the sparring with Madara. I won't tell. It's none of your business here. Again he ignored her challenge, but turned on his thirst for knowledge. Tobirama was thoughtfully silent for about half a minute, looked down at the sashimi bowl and, unable to control himself, reached for the chopsticks. He really likes fish. Naruto, seeing how he took the chopsticks, smiled widely again. This was her second small victory. Senju Jr., not paying attention to her smiles, picked up a thin slice of tuna with his chopsticks. You know who attacked them? Tobirama said without looking at Naruto. The smile on her face immediately disappeared. Tobirama was so attentive, especially to suspicious individuals, that it was not difficult for him to see recognition on her face when Akane described the attacker in detail. Uzumaki fell silent, her enthusiasm waning. Damn that Tobirama. Senju. I can't talk about it, she said gloomily. Her face was getting darker and darker with each passing moment. You see, another reason why I shouldn't trust you. Senju chewed the tuna with pleasure and reached for a piece of salmon. It would be much easier if you led us to the attacker, he casually continued to eat, while Naruto frowned, thinking about something. You know, I would gladly bring you his head on a platter myself, but Naruto clenched her left hand into a fist, tensed up, and exhaled with disappointment. She tried to run away from her thoughts and desires. She even managed to forget that somewhere here, very close, the future treasurer of Akatsuki was wandering. But he raised his gaze from the fish to her, waiting for an explanation. Deal with it yourselves, Naruto managed to squeeze out. She absolutely mustn't interfere. The longer she stayed here, the more dangerous it was for her present. And again she reached for the bottle, this time to wash down the pangs of her conscience and her dying principles. Tobirama reacted calmly to her statement, and continued to devour the fish, brushing off the thoughts of why she was hiding this from them. It was enough for him that this topic tormented her. It tore her apart from the inside with a growing sense of guilt. He saw it in her. The only thing that confused him in this situation was that he intuitively understood that she really couldn't tell him the identity of the criminal. And he took it for granted. And now he was giving in to his feelings again. Rationality and common sense left him as soon as he was near her. Someday this would destroy him. Gnaw him from the inside. Or kill him. Time would tell. But he will hope that his former cold-bloodedness of reason will not betray him, will not allow his feelings to take over, and he will be able to see in her a threat to himself in time. Someone in their trinity ruling the village must be the voice of reason. Chapter 14. Life had been in full swing since she went on her first mission. And it had rushed forward at such a speed that Naruto had a premonition that soon she wouldn't have a free minute. So there was no time to think about the fact that a Fiveheart was wandering around somewhere nearby. Just as there was no time to think about how to recreate the seals so that it would return her home until she left an impressive mark on history by doing something irreparable. For example, she would have gone hunting Kakuzu against all reason. By the way, after talking with Tobirama, she felt very sick because she couldn't even tell him how to deal with this ghoul. And God forbid she do something irreparable, kindly give Naruto therapy to Madara. He seemed okay, before he had time to become completely embittered with the whole world. She was sent to Uzushio. Naruto felt a mixture of panic and anticipation about this. She would see her mother's homeland, meet her distant relatives, see a country flourishing at this time, and not ruins. There were several reasons for such a mission. First, she saved Mito Uzumaki, responding to Akane's call. Secondly, it's not certain, but she assumed that Hashirama would still ask to check her barrier, and possibly even break it. That's where the panic came from. Thirdly, Naruto was ideal for accompanying a highborn Haim. She was a woman, which would allow her to be 24/7 with Mito, and a strong kunoichi, which would allow her to provide decent security for the future wife of the first, who had not yet fully recovered. Hashirama volunteered for the escort group. Tobirama did not approve. They even argued. Naruto overheard. Tobirama could also provide decent security and was an excellent diplomat. Most importantly, he was tough and reasonable, while Hashirama listened more to the arguments of his heart than to his mind. Naruto even felt some regret when she realized that Tobirama was barred from this mission. The memory of Senju Sr.'s changeable mood was still too fresh. Tobirama even suggested that Madara go. Because the village was now in fact ruled by Senju Sr., there was much more trust in him, and he did not frighten others with his gloomy appearance, like the formidable head of the Red-Eyed clan. Hashirama's departure was undesirable. But Naruto kept wondering why Tobirama so stubbornly insisted that his elder brother stay in Konoha. The younger Senju was a good leader, and could easily cope with the problems in his brother's absence. But Hashirama firmly said no. He would go, period. Because Mito had not yet fully recovered, and since the Uzumaki urgently asked to deliver their clansmen to Uzushio, Senju did not have time to properly treat the wounded woman. And so they decided. If Naruto believed in this at first, then now she realized the true reasons with crystal clarity. The future first ran next to Mito. Naruto stayed a little behind, next to Akane, not disturbing the other two. Senju and Uzumaki were actively talking about something. Naruto drilled their backs with a thoughtful look. Do you also think that something is fishy here? Akane asked, following the direction of her companion's gaze. Yes, everything is very transparent here, Naruto smiled, emerging from her own thoughts. Again she thought about the fact that she had witnessed the creation of history. Even so? Uzumaki Okane looked again at the backs of Mito and Hashirama running ahead. Uzumaki Haim suddenly tripped, her legs buckled, and she began to fall from the branch. Naruto, seeing this, wanted to jerk forward, but it was stupid. Hashirama was nearby. He caught the falling Mito in midair. She laughed awkwardly, and then smiled softly and gratefully at Hashirama, who lowered her to her feet, holding her in his arms longer than necessary. Romance? Akane said breathlessly, touched. Yeah, Naruto snorted cheerfully. What a rogue Senju was. Mito looked more than healthy and cheerful. And besides, how could Naruto not know that the Uzumaki are more resilient than dogs and recover in the shortest possible time? Hashirama simply fell in love. And it seemed that the feeling was mutual. And that was the reason Hashirama was pushing for the mission. Most likely, Tobirama was starting to suspect something similar as well. Hashirama's antics and Mito's subtle flirting, which Naruto understood on a purely intuitive level, accompanied them all the way for several days. Naruto even managed to get tired, watching this. She even wanted to come up to them, push their foreheads together and say, "Kiss already!" They looked sickeningly sweet and ugly cute. There was a sparkle of feelings and emotions between them. The Jinchuriki felt with her skin their chakra sparkled and got out of control due to new and such unusual emotions. But they stubbornly kept their distance, remaining on the edge of reasonable and permissible. Probably it is impossible here to just go and kiss the heiress of the clan, in the thick of the forest, a shinobi who barely knew her, albeit of noble origin. Akane almost did not talk to her. She remained tensely silent when asked about Uzushio, and when her gaze darkened completely, Naruto realized that the topic was taboo. It was better not to pry. They were not allowed into Uzushio. They were met in a fishing village on the seashore. And Naruto so wanted to see the village. Her disappointment knew no bounds. But, as a rule, no one cared about the feelings of the visiting guests. They were given a warm and cordial welcome, but still cast wary glances. Especially in her direction, after Hashirama had a private conversation with the head of this delegation. The theory that she had been dragged here for a reason was beginning to be confirmed. "Naruto, let's go." Akane entered her room in the guest house, kindly provided to them at the request of Uzumaki. Mito's companion looked at Naruto as if she saw him for the first time. Such close attention caused discomfort. "Not similar, huh?" Naruto smiled, hiding her panic. Akane blushed and quickly looked away, thereby confirming Naruto's guess. They already knew that she was half Uzumaki, and this somehow made them feel uneasy. She was taken to the central room, where Hashirama, Mito, and another old man were already present. On his forehead was a Hittite with a spiral. Uzushio already had protectors, perhaps Konoha borrowed their idea, Naruto noted distantly, feeling the tension hanging in this room. "My name is Ashina Uzumaki. I am the head of the clan," the stranger introduced himself. Naruto trembled inwardly, but smiled outwardly, pretending that she was not bothered by the current situation. Although he looked quite old and smiled at her kindly, Naruto did not believe in his kindness and weakness. Power emanated from him. Naruto, Uzumaki on his mother's side, Namikaze on his father's side. "It seems like a shinobi now, Konohagakure." Naruto glanced at Hashirama, doubting that she belonged to Konoha. And Konoha? It seemed that the name of the village had not yet been officially approved. Senju was more serious than ever, having lost all his good nature. It was stupid to be offended at him for subjecting her to another check. He was acting for security purposes, and she was a very suspicious person. As they say, trust but verify. "Who is your mother?" The Uzukage clearly wanted to know which of the Uzumaki had become a renegade clan member, running away from the village and giving birth to her in a mixed marriage. He needed her story. "I don't know," Naruto lied. In fact, she didn't know her. Only her name. "My parents died almost immediately after I was born," Naruto said firmly. "I'm an orphan. I've heard little about them." Ashina was thoughtfully silent, not taking her eyes off Naruto. His hesitation was bothering her. "Come here," Ashina asked. But he asked in such a way that there was no need to express any objections. What was hidden in his tone was somewhat frightening. It seemed like he asked, but as if he ordered, not giving any choice. Naruto obediently approached and sat down opposite the old man, kneeling down. Now they would test her barrier. There was nothing to think about. Cold sweat ran down her back. It was becoming increasingly difficult to keep a straight face and not show her panic. Her heart was constantly stopping in fear. The head of the scarlet-haired clan placed his dry, wrinkled palms on her temples. Naruto, without blinking, looked at the old man's face, feeling the unpleasant tingling of someone else's chakra. The excitement was starting to develop into full-fledged fear. It seemed that her forehead was covered in sweat, and her body muscles were cramping. The oppressive silence mixed with the tension of everyone around her made her heart beat faster, and her skin become covered in sticky sweat. Such an atmosphere only worsened her moral state. Naruto persuaded herself to sit still, because who, if not the Uzumaki, understood Fuinjutsu better than others? Perhaps they would tell her what kind of barrier was on her. What did it affect? They will just look at the barrier, maybe they will be able to remove it. They are not brainwashers like Yamanaka. They will not pick through her brain. They will not learn her secrets. But they will open the way for others. After some time, her head began to buzz. Buzz as if her skull was being hit with hammers from all sides. It seemed that the procedure was dragging on. The pressure spreading from her temples to the back of her head made her want to howl. It felt like just a little more and her head would just crack. Naruto clutched her knees until her knuckles turned white, trying to endure the emerging pain. A scream was starting to form in her throat. Everything was so bad and painful that she was about to give up. She did not expect such unpleasant sensations. Everything ended suddenly. The steel vice released her head. Her body immediately went limp, and Naruto almost fell to the side, barely maintaining her slipping balance. Swallowing hard, she realized she had bitten her lip. Or cheek. The salty, metallic taste bloomed on her tongue in all its disgusting glory. Ashina lowered his hands and looked at her with interest. His silhouette was mercilessly blurry in front of her. Naruto couldn't focus her vision. Her hands were shaking in her lap. As was the rest of her. It's just a barrier that hides memories. Not all of them. Selectively. And I can't remove it. But it hides more than just memories. It prevents her power from restoring. It draws chakra from her heart to maintain itself. Naruto barely heard him, even though she was sitting opposite Ashina. Her ears were still ringing and pounding. And she needed to hear. She also needed to understand what kind of Fuin she had. She had to start working somewhere. Child, who gave you this? The old man's faded eyes looked at her again. I don't know. She barely squeezed out, swaying. Her back didn't want to hold her upright. Everything was swimming and blurry before her eyes again. The world around her was spinning. This is a style of Fuinjutsu unknown to me. I can barely guess the basics of Uzumaki seals. The head of the clan thoughtfully stroked his beard, peering intently at the probable relative opposite him. He saw her deplorable state, but was in no hurry to help in any way. He was watching, waiting for something. They said that my father studied Fuinjutsu. My mother taught him. Not only was he able to understand and use it, but he also succeeded in it. Naruto tried to massage her temples to calm the itchy headache. The room stopped blurring. The image of the old man opposite became clearer and more static. Most likely my father did it. Yes. She carefully uttered an outright lie. It was not on her brain that her father's seal was, not on her brain. Someone else had done their best here. The stern, wrinkled and scarred face lit up with a smile. Warm and friendly. Behind her, someone breathed a sigh of relief. And who is your mother, my child? He asked again. I don't know. I know she was Uzumaki. And my father was Namikaze. They died when I was born. An orphan, she repeated calmly, without going into details. Naruto slowly relaxed, no longer feeling outright distrust from the people around her. The only thing was that such a keen interest was alarming. She hoped not to blurt out something wrong. Ashina thought again, squinting carefully, feeling her face with his gaze. As if he was looking for familiar features inherent in their clan. But Naruto was a natural copy of her father. From her mother, only the chakra reserve and the QB inside. I had a great niece, but she ran away. About 20 years ago. How old are you? 20, Naruto blurted out, belatedly realizing that she could have lied, made herself look a year or two younger. And her mother would have shown up for a more plausible past. And she would have acquired a patron in the Uzumaki clan. And Shoto's daughter didn't return from a mission about 25 years ago. He reached out to her, and taking her chin, twisted her head from side to side. Uzumaki only widened her eyes in surprise at such an action. And then she was overcome by such a numbness. If they now recognized her as an Uzumaki and were wondering whose daughter she could be, then did that mean that she would be taken into the clan? Because she had Uzumaki blood in her? So that's another reason why Hashirama brought her here. A family reunion. No! This won't do. She won't let herself be taken away so easily. She won't. And to make matters worse, such weakness has come over her. And how can she fight back if she is dragged into the maelstrom against her will? Forgive me for interfering, Ashina-sama, but she is a shinobi. Konoha! Hashirama suddenly butted in. It seemed to him that Ashina, sensing Uzumaki in her, wanted to take the girl into the clan. And what if her relatives are found here now? And Hashirama has plans. And there is no need to take away his capable combat personnel. Especially if the fact of her belonging to the clan of Scarlet Demons was confirmed. But now Naruto was scared. So scared that fear involuntarily appeared on her face. She would not be able to put up adequate resistance. Let her remain in the service of your village. She is half Uzumaki. She probably doesn't understand anything about Fuins, and if she has ever seen our secrets, they are behind 7 locks. Even we cannot open these very locks. Ashina finally unclenched his fingers and let go of her long-suffering head. And she has countless relatives here. We've had girls disappear from time to time. Sometimes on missions. Sometimes running at the behest of their hearts. She could be the daughter of any of the missing. Naruto breathed a sigh of relief. She got away with it. Well, that's great. Hashirama drawled cheerfully behind her. The first question on the agenda was solved. Akane, help this girl move. He gently called his granddaughter's scarlet-haired companion, seeing how Naruto was putting on a brave face and stubbornly holding his back straight, although she was feeling quite weak after he had tried to open the barrier. Shamelessly rude, without any caution, checking how the girl would withstand such a load. She really was an Uzumaki, too resilient. And Naruto didn't even have time to squeak in protest before someone grabbed her by the arm, pulled her towards themselves and, gently clasping her around the waist, led her to the side. Her legs really were like cotton wool. Uzumaki was lost in her thoughts, half listening to how the next round of history was happening, or more specifically, how the bridges between Konoha and Uzushio were being built. She was getting sleepy. Although her head had stopped buzzing, the feeling of fatigue only increased. And the monotony of conversations about politics and cooperation was tiring. On the contrary, she should have pricked up her ears and taken note, so to speak, gained some practice. But she listened attentively only to the part where they expressed gratitude to her and Hashirama for saving the clan's time. How long all this lasted, she could not say. It seemed that Naruto had even managed to doze off, for which she immediately received an elbow in the side from Akane and a remark, kindly whispered in her ear. It was unclear why they were here, if only Hashirama and Ashina were conducting the conversation. There were a couple more people sitting here from the Uzumaki clan, but Naruto did not care much about them. It was already getting dark outside. Naruto's legs went numb, and his stomach began to rumble. The conversation turned into a debate. At some point, without warning, apparently at a prearranged time, the men paused, because low tables were brought into the room, on which scrolls were immediately placed. Akane, Mito and a couple of Uzumaki unknown to her opened the scrolls, put their palms to them and there was food in front of them. Can we have some of these too? Hashirama looked at the thin parchment with the ligature of Fuins with delight. What else do you use them for? These in particular are for food. There are some for weapons. You can seal anything in these, Ashina smiled indulgently, seeing the delight on Hashirama's face. Naruto was not surprised by this. In her time, almost every shinobi had these scrolls, especially for storing weapons and medicine. We will definitely discuss these conditions after dinner, the old man said softly. And a person? Well, a living one. Or an animal? Hashirama's eyes sparkled. Naruto, looking at him, remembered Tobirama. He would have been delighted too. True, not so obviously. Most likely, he would have tried to study the Fuin more carefully. I wonder how the younger Uzumaki Senju would have reacted to his scientific interest? He, probably armed with a notebook and pen, would have started writing something. Or drawing. In as much detail as possible, so that he could figure it out later. You can't! Such enthusiastic interest on the part of the shinobi god clearly flattered the head of the clan, judging by his satisfied smile. Taking his chopsticks in his hands, he began to eat, wishing everyone a bon appetit. A discordant chorus of voices echoed him. This brought Naruto out of her thoughts about Tobirama. In her fantasies, Tobirama was scolded for trying to sniff out the clan's secrets of the seal masters. Ashina-sama! Hashirama suddenly became serious again. Naruto raised her head from her bowl of rice and looked at Hashirama. The first and last time she saw him so serious was when Mito was dying. Speak! The old man gave him the go-ahead to make an obvious request and continued eating. Perhaps this is a little hasty, but… Hashirama hesitated slightly for a moment, losing his former confidence. Naruto tore her gaze away from her food again. She decided to be an observer for the rest of the day, especially since she was still tired. I ask for your blessing for my marriage to Uzumaki Haim. And bam! Hashirama Sr. suddenly pulled away and bowed so deeply that he almost knocked the table over with his forehead. Naruto heard her neck crunch when she turned her head sharply. The chopsticks almost fell out of her hands. She heard someone's shocked "Ah." What? So soon? They've only known each other for a week. Hashirama! She exclaimed reproachfully, feeling the haste in all of this. And somehow it was suddenly forgotten that yes, they should be husband and wife. They were in love. But not right away. Almost right away. That's not how it's done. Or is it? And then she understood why Senju Sr. was pushing for this mission. And it wasn't even about flirting with Mito and spending time with her. He just wanted to conclude the engagement. Without Tobirama and Madara's lectures. The fair-haired Uzumaki immediately imagined Tobirama scolding Hashirama for his ardor and haste. Yes. A clear girl's voice, almost on the verge of a squeal, broke the ringing silence that had ensued. The Haim, who had been silent and invisible all this time, came to life. Yes. And again. So loud and happy that Naruto's head began to buzz and hum again. And Mito could be a true Uzumaki. Mito! Sternly and reproachfully. They're not asking you, Ashina scolded her. The scarlet-haired princess immediately became embarrassed, blushed, and hiding her crimson face behind her red bangs, froze in tension. Everyone around froze in tension. This was unexpected. No one present expected such a turn of events. Ashina measured Senju, who was still bowing low, with a long and intent look. Then he slowly turned his gaze to his granddaughter. He frowned, which made Mito squeeze the fabric of her kimono in her palms in tension. I bless you, stretching his thin lips into a smile, he said cordially. We'll discuss the terms tomorrow. And as if nothing had happened, the head of the Uzumaki clan began eating again. Tobirama will kill him. And me, Naruto whispered under her breath, but at the same time she was smiling happily, seeing how Hashirama's dark face spread into a wide smile. Still, she was happy for him. Very happy. But she sensed that everything was not as rosy as she would like. Chapter 15. Why didn't you let them kill me? Naruto yelled. Hashirama, hoping that at least now he would hear her. The future first did not hear her, being in his rosy fantasies. Senju was very winged, almost soaring along the branches, did not react to her question even the third time. Uzumaki thought that just a little more, and he would really take off, and she would have sugar on her teeth crunching from the blissful look of her companion. To be honest, this was irritating. They were returning to Konoha. All matters were settled, including the upcoming wedding. It was supposed to take place in a month. What a surprise awaits Tobirama. Hashirama was in the clouds, clearly dreaming of Mito, and the prospect of the future did not bother him at all. But Naruto was mentally preparing for a dressing down. And she was sure that this very dressing down would happen. Tobirama, having learned what Senju had done, would give them both a good beating. Hers for not intervening, Hashirama for his willfulness. She had enough brains to come to the conclusion that a suitor like Hashirama should not marry the first person he met. Even if that first person he met was none other than the princess of the Uzumaki clan. The match was, of course, a good one, no matter how you looked at it, but still, it should be a more thoughtful step. And probably they needed more time. To get used to each other, to get to know each other better. And how much had passed? A week? Half of which Mito was unconscious, recovering her strength. And the way Hashirama asked for Mito's hand, it was not his status to bend his back like that in front of people. Strong, powerful, the future head of the village crawled almost on his knees in front of Ashina. Tobirama would not have allowed him to do that. Naruto, for example, saw sincerity in this, coming from the bottom of her heart, but Tobirama would have seen humiliation first and foremost. Kami-sama, what a different view of the same situation they have. And in general, the albino would have presented this marriage as political, well thought out, beneficial to both parties. But Hashirama had a purely impulsive impulse, he was blind and deaf from love. Whom did they? Senju did not understand, finally reacting and glancing over his shoulder at his companion, fluttering out of his romantic thoughts. Madara and Tobirama, Naruto emerged from her own thoughts. She would later ask Hashirama about his idea of marriage. And now she wondered on what basis he had spared her life. Her heart sensed that the fact that she was still breathing was due to Senju Senior AAA. Killing everyone you meet is not an option, Senju smiled. An option. I fell out of nowhere, there's a barrier in my head. Isn't that enough to at least put me in jail for life? Naruto continued to develop the topic. Hashirama was truly a kind person, the likes of which the world had never seen, but at the same time he was responsible for the safety of the village and his people. Even Naruto wasn't confident in herself if someone unknown had fallen on Sasuke's head, someone with a barrier in his brain that neither Uchiha, nor Yamanaka, nor Uzumaki could handle. She would have been tormented by suspicion. She wouldn't kill him, but she wouldn't let that person walk around freely. And they keep her free, though right under Madara's nose, let her go on missions, and even took her into the village's shinobi. I feel something in you. Elusive, but so familiar that I'm ready to give you a chance, closing my eyes to all this. Senju frankly admitted. Yes, he really did sense some kinship in her. Spiritual, perhaps. Naruto, hearing his answer, almost tripped in shock. Exactly. They were both reincarnations of Ashura. Could Hashirama really sense that? Oh gods! What else could he sense in her? And yet, what if enemy clans sent me, sealing a bijou in me, which would eventually break out and destroy your village? Whatever. Naruto took a risk. She asked about the bijou in a flowery way. And holding her breath, she waited for an answer. Ahaha, Senju laughed, for which he received a look full of displeasure. It was as if she was asking this seriously. It sounds on the verge of fantasy. Bijou are fairy tales. Legends. Sealing them in people? Nonsense, Hashirama expressed his opinion, realizing that she really wanted to hear an answer from him. You think the bijou is a fiction? Her eyes popped out of her head from such a statement. She was discouraged. It was Hashirama who would later propose locking the bijou in people. And he would personally catch them all and divide them between the hidden villages that would form. And he would even go so far as to ban one of them from his own spouse. Of course, it's a fiction. Such a force cannot exist in nature, his answer was sincere. She really didn't expect this from him. Perhaps the time had not yet come when the world of all people would turn upside down from the shock that tailed beasts were quite real. A man told me that he could grow an entire forest with one technique and heal a person with the touch of his palm, Uzumaki muttered embarrassedly, burning Hashirama's back. Senju with a look. So the Biju lived for themselves, did not grieve, did not go out to people, until the evil Uncle Madara came to them, did not defeat the strongest, and did not set him on his own village. That's how it all happens. That's different, he reasonably noted. So you believe in these tales? The elder Senju asked in response. Why not? But she will not prove the existence of the tailed beasts. You never know what she will inspire him to do. With Hashirama. Thank you for believing me, Naruto smiled, changing the topic. I would not say that I believe, even after the words of the head of the Uzumaki clan. I just gave you a chance to prove that you are not dangerous to us. The war has already taken a lot of people, he corrected her. Still, he is not such a naive simpleton as to believe everyone he meets. Otherwise, he would have been well deceived somewhere long ago, or even killed. Well, then thank you for that. You won't regret it. Naruto respected him even more for exposing himself to risk, not wanting to spill unnecessary blood. Perhaps, within the framework of this time, it was utter stupidity, but Hashirama was a model of virtue and humanity in such a dark and cruel world. I hope so, otherwise Tobirama will remind me of my mistake for the rest of my life, Hashirama grinned. By the way, about Tobirama. He killed you. And me for the company. Since Hashirama smoothly moved to Tobirama, she could calmly develop a completely different topic. Also very interesting to her. I know, Hashirama darkened, imagining the debriefing that awaited him in Konoha. But everything has already been done. He will not risk breaking off the engagement, and making enemies of the Uzumaki clan, and again he shone like a polished copper teapot. Smart, Hashirama is a sly fox. Now we can consider the situation hopeless. The dissolution of the upcoming wedding could be a mortal insult to the scarlet-haired clan. And there would be no union between them, nor even banal indifference. The Uzumaki would have avenged such a disgrace. It was not for nothing that Hashirama was, well, in this time he will still be, Hokage. Hashirama, perhaps I am interfering in none of my business, and in general in your soul, but... A week had barely passed since you met. Naruto was very worried about this. Yes, she herself could be just as hasty and hot-tempered, but here. It seems you can't make such serious decisions when you're blinded by feelings. It's simple. Hashirama understood perfectly well what Naruto meant. Surprisingly, Tobirama would clearly agree with her on this, which was strange. These times are cruel and merciless. And the average age of a shinobi used to be 15. Few survived that age during the era of interclan wars. Now I can die on any mission. I don't see any reason to drag it out. Mito. The tone suddenly changed from harsh and stern to soft, and so sensual that even Naruto was touched to the depths of his soul, and it seemed that she was really sticking her nose where she shouldn't. She's incomparable. He picked the word to describe his future wife. Naruto felt a pang of envy. But no one had ever spoken about her with such an intonation. No one had ever fallen in love so strongly in a matter of days. Maybe moments. And she had never fallen in love with anyone. Well, how could she have managed to experience something like that when all she had to do was run after Sasuke, and then the war, followed by intensive studies, so that her dream would finally come true? This is love, Naruto concluded, although she herself had no idea what it was or how it all happened. Perhaps, this is exactly how it happens. A spark, a storm, emotions, and now you are standing in the temple at the altar, taking an oath of love and fidelity. They returned to the village quickly. Mito's condition and presence nearby did not slow them down. They made halts only a couple of times, and then only to eat, so they returned at a faster pace. Hashirama turned out to be a much more acceptable companion than Madara. It was possible to talk to Senju. Quite friendly. And interesting. Naruto even managed to ask him about Senchakra. For Hashirama, Naruto was not a nobody, and he willingly kept up a conversation with her. Her mood definitely improved. Her fears eased, and her heart became a little calmer. But the relief did not last long. As soon as they found themselves on the threshold of the residence, everything inside her was squeezed into a steel vise of tension. Such a feeling usually did not bode well. Maybe she was winding herself up, or maybe her intuition was working, but entering the office where Tobirama was currently stationed felt a little uneasy. Fortunately for her, a report was not required. At least from her. Hashirama began to report verbally to his brother, bragging that everything ended well. And even more. Tobirama showed no more interest in them than in the furniture. Especially in her. Compared to Hashirama, she felt like a full-fledged speck of dust under her feet. No, she understood that he had an important job that required his full attention, and all that, but a jaw-dropping feeling. Especially for her. Because frankly speaking, Tobirama ignored her. He didn't even cast a sideways glance in her direction. This feeling for quite a long moment overshadowed all her concerns and fears, so much so that she wanted to butt into the brothers' conversation, like, "I was on a mission too, ask me." But her mind understood that it was better to run away. Because the results. Let Hashirama figure it out himself. But she stood her ground, watching as Tobirama showed minimal interest in their routine, seemingly unremarkable mission, remaining completely immersed in the documentation. And there were a lot of documents. A mountain of scrolls hinted that in the next couple of days, or even a week, depending on the contents of the scrolls, Tobirama would be provided with a dead-end job. And her thoughts smoothly flowed to her dream. It turned out not so joyful. Paperwork, a button nailed to a work chair, a table bursting with documents, and a pen that would definitely grow into her fingers to sign documents and issue orders on paper. Naruto was about to leave when she realized that her presence here was not needed, and her heart sensed that it was time to be on the other side of the village, away from this place, before Senju Sr. reached the most important thing, but she was too late. Fortune turned her butt. For a miserable moment. Hashirama misspoke. "What are you doing?" Tobirama, absorbed in studying some documents, immediately raised his head and turned his gaze to his brother. The slip of the tongue was immediately heard and taken into account. Uzumaki, trying to be as inconspicuous as ever, tried to slip away, silently, as befits a ninja. But alas, a displeased look pinned her to the spot, as did a wall of water that appeared, as if by magic, at the door, clearly hinting that they finally wanted to talk to her too. "I'm getting married, brother," Hashirama said, smiling from ear to ear, as if Tobirama at that moment did not resemble a storm that was about to break out with all its indestructible ruthlessness. It seemed that he was blinded by happiness. Or that was his tactic. Pretend to be a blind fool. Although, one does not exclude the other. "And you allowed this?" Tobirama looked at her. So much so that Naruto immediately wanted to snap back. He was angry and did not hide it. And finally, he looked at her. "They didn't ask my opinion," Uzumaki snorted, looking at the door with a pitiful look. The wall of water mockingly shimmered in the rays of the sun. Hashirama was still shining like a polished teapot. Tobirama was clutching the broken handle in his fist, glaring at him. What a bad situation. "You're kidding me," Senju Jr. growled. "You can't make decisions like that so hastily. Especially you, Hashirama," Tobirama exclaimed, giving them both a look full of anger in turn. "No way," Uzumaki assured him, starting to get angry. "He's an adult, it's his life, let him do whatever he wants." She stood up for Hashirama, simultaneously shifting all responsibility for what was happening onto Hashirama. Although what's there to shift, it's his decision and his choice, she has nothing to do with it. "It's like you came out of the woods, he's the head of the clan, the future head of this village." Tobirama continued to get irritated, revealing what was usually hidden under the icy mask. And it seemed like a stone, not a man. "You should have intervened." The scarlet eyes became even brighter, filling with blood. "If you remembered, then that's how it is." From the forest. Fell. "On your head," Uzumaki got angry, offended. No. They can't contact. In no way at all. Perhaps she is interested in Tobirama as a historical figure and a person who can help her get out of here, because he is a genius. But as much as she is interested in him, he infuriates her. There is no middle ground. Hashirama said this on purpose, before she left. Yes. Exactly. On purpose. So that he would not be the only one to get a scolding. What a bug. Tobirama successfully switched all his attention to her. Maybe, being a genius, he understood why everything was exactly as it was. Perhaps he saw the benefit of this alliance. But he could not come to terms with the fact that this happened without his knowledge. So he took it out on Naruto. Because for him, she was not important, unlike Hashirama. Tobirama, that's enough, Hashirama said coldly, cutting off his brother's obviously sharp answer, revealing himself to them. That side of him, from the short one, the enemy's knees were shaking with fear. Senju Jr. remained silent. And he was ready to explode. Naruto dared to remind him of his failure. Almost a disgrace that literally fell on his head, Naruto said firmly, pulling herself together, trying not to get even more irritated, wondering if she could leave through the window, which was right behind the future second. A very angry second at the moment. Tobirama might have wanted to tell her something, but Naruto's argument was weighty. The marriage of the elder Senju was a family matter. And it only concerned them. Not her. Therefore, he turned his indignant gaze to his brother. Bite me, Senju brothers. Naruto smiled caustically. He wouldn't let all the dogs loose on her. One white-haired girl, who encroached on her already exhausted nervous system, was enough for her in her time. She had nothing to do with it. After that there was a pause. The Senju brothers were playing a staring contest. Naruto was in no hurry to leave. After all, it was really none of her business who Hashirama was wooing. So, we can watch how it all ends. The thick ki of two powerful shinobi flooded the office. Their staring turned into a different fight, but still silent. Naruto even became curious who would win this mental war. Tobirama sighed heavily and tiredly rubbed the bridge of his nose. The pressure in the office dropped. The goosebumps from their deadly ki stopped running under her skin. When is the wedding? A hint of humility flashed through the tone of the younger Senju, but his voice was still in tune with steel. In a month, Hashirama sang happily, returning to the hypostasis of a carefree merry fellow. Can I go? Naruto made herself known. She was superfluous here. Superfluous. And the door was still hidden behind a water curtain. But both Senju ignored her. Let me go on a mission, Tobirama suddenly said, glancing quickly at Naruto. What mission? Hashirama asked cautiously. Had his brother really just accepted the engagement? He had expected a different reaction. Long and tedious lectures, assurances that there was no need to rush, and all that sort of thing. But he hadn't expected this, not this. I'll put together the team myself. Tobirama crossed his arms over his chest and turned his gaze to Naruto. So cunning, with a ton of arrogance. There was no irritation or anger. I want to get a gift for my daughter-in-law. Hashirama froze. Naruto tensed up. And then she shook her head. It seemed she understood where Tobirama was getting at. She didn't rejoice for long. She thought that was it, the topic was closed. He would stop trying to find out, but apparently he couldn't leave everything as it was. And she understood him, but to drag her into this venture, she can't. What gift? Hashirama tensed up. The amusement gave way to suspicion. The head of the one who attacked Uzumaki Haim, Tobirama allowed the corners of his lips to rise in a semblance of a smile. A nasty one. Victorious. But Naruto's lips dropped. And his fist clenched. And his eyes flared with indignation. She didn't want to talk, so they'll go hunting together. What a damn bastard. Good, Hashirama exhaled with relief. The younger brother accepted his choice, although he frankly did not approve of the fact that the elder Senju had decided to marry so suddenly. And Tobirama understood what the consequences of a refusal were fraught with. All he could do was meekly accept it, But to start talking about gifts like that was unexpected. Wonderful! The elder Senju rejoiced, not paying attention to the fact that Tobirama was keeping his eyes on the deathly pale Naruto.